what if the greatest hero of ancient times wasn't who you thought he was? Beyond the well-known epic, Mesopotamia holds secrets about Gilgamesh that rewrite history and redefine heroism. Prepare to have your understanding of humanity's oldest stories completely transformed. Forget everything you think you know about ancient Mesopotamia. We're diving deep into the untold narratives of Gilgamesh, revealing a civilization far more complex, mystical, and groundbreaking than any history book dared to tell. Get ready for a journey that will shatter your preconceptions. Are you ready to journey back to the cradle of civilization and uncover the hidden truths behind the Epic of Gilgamesh? Welcome back, fellow history enthusiasts. You're watching Legendary Anime Tales, where we bring the history and myths to life with a unique anime twist. Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. Think of it as humanity's Season 1, the pilot episode where cities, kings, and writing all got their big debut. But here's the twist. The story of Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, might just be the highlight reel, leaving tons of lore off-screen. For over a century, we thought we had the Epic of Gilgamesh figured out. 12 tablets, one epic story. But deep within museum archives and scattered across the sands of modern-day Iraq, archaeologists started finding anomalies. Tiny broken fragments of cuneiform that were clearly about Gilgamesh, but didn't fit anywhere in the established narrative. These weren't just typos or minor variations. They were entire scenes, alternate dialogues, and plot twists that had been lost to time like deleted scenes from history itself. Think about your favorite long-running series. Imagine if someone found a lost script for an episode where Ned Stark survives, or a hidden chapter of detailing a whole new adventure for Luffy between arcs. We're not talking fan fiction, we're talking about 4,000-year-old DLC for the world's first epic hero. These fragments are the historical equivalent of finding a secret level in a game you thought you'd mastered. The implications are wild, and this is where it gets truly mind-bending. The standard epic paints Gilgamesh as a larger-than-life warrior king, a demigod obsessed with fame and immortality. But some of these rogue tablets whisper a different story. They hint at a Gilgamesh who was less of a tyrant and more of a scholar, a reluctant ruler. One particularly controversial fragment seems to describe him not fighting a monster, but with it. What if our perception of this hero is based on a blockbuster movie adaptation, while the director's cut has been sitting in a box for millennia? What was he after? Hold that thought, because the answer might just rewrite the definition of a hero. So what are these texts? Are they just regional variants, like a story told with a different accent? Or are they retellings from later centuries where new authors put their own spin on the classic tale? Or, and this is the most tantalizing possibility, were they deliberate spin-offs? Did ancient scribes create a shared universe, a Mesopotamian cinematic universe where characters like Enkidu or the goddess Ishtar could have their own side stories? If so, the Epic of Gilgamesh isn't a single book, it's the foundational text of an entire literary franchise. And it all comes back to the big questions. These fragments don't just add flavor, they challenge the core of the saga, especially when it comes to Gilgamesh's other half, Enkidu, and the infamous flood. The main story has a clear sequence of events, but these lost lines introduce contradictions that are impossible to ignore. One fragment suggests a different fate for Enkidu, a choice the official version completely erases. We'll connect these dots later, and trust me, it will change how you see their legendary friendship forever. This is a 4,000-year-old mystery that's finally unraveling. The rabbit hole goes deeper than you can imagine. Stay with me. Everyone remembers Enkidu, the wild man who became Gilgamesh's other half. But his story doesn't start with their legendary bromance. It begins with a desperate prayer. The people of Uruk, crushed under the heel of their arrogant king, Gilgamesh, cried out to the gods for a savior. And the gods answered. They created Enkidu, not as a monster but as a mirror. A being molded from the raw earth, possessing a strength to rival the king's, but with a spirit as untamed as nature itself. He was the living embodiment of the wilderness, a force of pure instinct who drank from streams with the beasts and knew nothing of cities, kings, or civilization. He wasn't just created to balance Gilgamesh, he was a direct challenge to the very definition of what it meant to be human in the ancient world. But how do you turn a force of nature into a man? The epic gives us a fascinating and surprisingly complex answer. You introduce him to human connection and wisdom. Through his encounter with Shamat, a temple priestess, Enkidu learns about food, clothing, and society. But more importantly, he gains self-awareness. This isn't a simple story of civilizing the savage. It's about a character gaining a soul, a conscience. He becomes human not by losing his wildness, but by adding empathy to his strength. This new enlightened Enkidu travels to Uruk, not to serve Gilgamesh, but to confront him, to stop his tyranny. And that confrontation is pure anime gold. Think of it like Goku finally meeting Vegeta. Gilgamesh is the arrogant, untouchable prince convinced of his own superiority. Enkidu is the outsider, the wild-card powerhouse who shows up and challenges him on every level. Their battle is legendary, a city-shaking brawl that ends not with a victor, but with mutual respect. For the first time, Gilgamesh has met his equal. He found someone who didn't just fear his power but could match it. In that moment of stalemate, a rivalry was born, and in that rivalry the greatest friendship of the ancient world was forged. Alone, they were powerful, but together, they were about to become legendary. This newfound bond immediately propelled them into mythic adventure. They set their sights on the forbidden cedar forest to slay its monstrous guardian, Humbaba. This wasn't just a quest for glory, it was the ultimate team-up mission. It was in the heat of this impossible battle, relying on each other to survive, that their bond was truly sealed in blood and fire. But this friendship did more than just make for a great story. It was a cultural earthquake. Before Enkidu, the Mesopotamian ideal of a king was one of solitary divine authority. The king was a remote, godlike figure. But the story of Gilgamesh and Enkidu introduced a radical new idea, that true strength, even for a king, comes from connection, from loyalty, from having a brother in arms who will tell you when you're wrong. This epic was essentially state-sponsored media, but it was teaching a lesson that resonates even today. Leadership isn't about being above everyone else, it's about the bonds you forge. It helped a civilization rethink the very concepts of strength, community, and what it truly means to be human. But the gods who brought them together would be the ones to tear them apart. Their victory against Humbaba came at a terrible cost, angering the heavens and sealing Enkidu's fate. The death of his friend shatters Gilgamesh, transforming his quest for glory into a desperate, terrified search for immortality. And that search will lead him to an ancient survivor, a man who lived through a world-destroying flood. Hold that thought, because the story he hears is going to sound incredibly familiar, and it will change everything we think we know about the Bible's most famous stories. Here's where it gets even crazier. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains one of the earliest versions of the Great Flood myth. But this wasn't a one-off story. Mesopotamia had multiple flood traditions, woven into a whole mythological tapestry. Deities like Ea, Utnapishtim, and others shaped a worldview where survival and divine tests went hand in hand. So, was Gilgamesh's epic just a story, or a coded memory of something humanity lived through? We'll circle back to that, stay with me. Multiple traditions suggest communities encoded memories into myth, and those myths shaped law, ritual, and survival strategies. Stay tuned, the pieces fit together more strangely than you think. What makes this story truly immortal isn't just the fact that it was etched onto clay tablets 4,000 years ago, it's the themes. The raw, unfiltered human code that's been running in our operating system since the beginning. We're talking about the big three: mortality, friendship, and the relentless, desperate hunger for meaning. Let's start with friendship. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is the original bromance. It's the prototype for every rival-turned-brother story arc ever written. They start as enemies, two sides of the same hyper-powered coin, and become inseparable. Their bond is forged in battle and sealed by respect. It's a friendship so powerful it literally challenges the gods, and then that friendship is shattered. Enkidu dies and Gilgamesh is slammed with a fear that defines our entire species, the terror of death. This isn't just sadness, it's a full-blown existential crisis. He roams the wilderness haunted by the question, shall I not die too? Am I not like Enkidu? This fear of oblivion, of our own light winking out, is the same fear that keeps us up at night. It's what drives us to leave a mark, to build, to create, to scream into the void that I was here. His quest for immortality isn't just about dodging the Grim Reaper, it's a search for an answer, a search for a purpose that death cannot erase. This is the blueprint for the hero's journey. So when you think of Gilgamesh, don't just picture a dusty relic of the past, picture humanity's first superhero. Seriously, 2/3 god, 1/3 man with superhuman strength and a tragic backstory fueled by the loss of his best friend. He's an arrogant king who has to be humbled, a hero who fights monsters, and a man who stares into the abyss. He's got the power of Superman, the grief of Batman, and the royal arrogance of Thor, all rolled into one. He is the original, and his DNA is everywhere in the stories we love today. Yes, anime fans, Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist, trying to defy the laws of the universe to reverse a tragic loss. He's wrestling with the exact same questions as Gilgamesh, and don't even get me started on video games. That recurring, dimension-hopping swordsman in Final Fantasy, that's him. Or, for the ultimate tribute, look at the Fate Stay Night franchise, where Gilgamesh is summoned as the king of heroes, an impossibly powerful and arrogant warrior who literally owns the prototype of every legendary weapon. They didn't just borrow the name, they downloaded his entire personality file. The technology changes from clay tablets to 4K screens, but the human heart doesn't. The questions are the same. How do we live a meaningful life? How do we cope with loss? What do we leave behind? And remember, the real secret of Gilgamesh is that we're still writing it today. Every time we tell a story about friendship, loss, and the search for meaning, we're adding another verse to his epic. If this blew your mind, don't just take my word for it. Dive into the epic itself. Challenge yourself. Explore the fragments, read the different translations, and see if you can spot his shadow in the next blockbuster you watch or the next game you play. Because history isn't just behind us, it's alive, a living, breathing part of every story we tell right now.